Welcome to my live teaching learning session of Indian Economy BECE 145. Today is the last session of this paper, Indian Economy 1 BECE 145. And the last unit of this paper is International Comparison. International Comparison is in block 4, and under this block, Unit 11, Unit 12, Unit 13, and Unit 14 are included. So in this block, International Comparison, which is the last block of this paper, under this unit, we will discuss about the following topics. One is comparative profile of growth and structural changes. Next is social and economic development of India. Next topic is trade and balance of payment. Next is governance and institutions. And the last topic will be good governance and governance indicators. So, as you know that in this paper, Indian Economy 1, till now, you have studied about what was the condition of Indian economy since independence or at the time of independence. You have studied about what is the difference between economic growth and economic development, what factors influence economic development, what is structural changes, what is development paradigm. You have studied about the topic of poverty, inequality, unemployment, and now you will study about international comparison. International comparison is very important topic because in this topic we will compare India's condition, India's economic growth, India's social and economic development with other developed nations or other Asian countries or big countries, BRICS, BRICS. So this is the topic of international comparison in which we will study about these following topics. Now let us start from first topic, structural changes and patterns of development. What do you mean by structural changes? First of all, structural changes includes that the change in occupational structure. Occupational structure include three sectors of the economy like primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. Primary sector, in this sector, we include agriculture and its allied activities like fishing, quarrying, mining, etc. In secondary sector, which is known as manufacturing sector, under this sector we include all types of industries like small scale industries, cottage industries, big industries, large scale industries, medium size industries, all types of industries which main aim is to produce goods and services or to convert raw material into finished goods. Third sector is tertiary sector, which is known as service sector. In this sector, we include banking, insurance, transportation, communication, all types of services. So structural changes and patterns of development under this topic, Chenry's model explain the empirical studies identified several characteristics, features of economic development. Here is a shift from agriculture to industrial production. If we move from agriculture to industrial sector, and if we move from agriculture to industrial and industrial to service sector, this is known as structural changes. Next is steady accumulation of physical and human capital. Next is changes in consumer demand is also included in structural changes. As you know that at present consumer demand is changing. In the beginning or at the primitive time period, consumers demand mainly depends upon agriculture products, but as well as economy is civilized or economy is going to be developed, so our consumers demand pattern is also changing. Next is increased urbanization. At the time of independence, near about 10 to 12% people were living only in urban areas. Near about 88% people were living in rural areas. But at present, 70% people are living in rural areas and 30% people are living in urban areas. Urbanization is increasing, but at a very slow rate. Next is decline in family size. If family size is decreasing, then it will be called a structural change and pattern of development. If family size decreases, population controls or population growth rate falls, then we can move at the path of development. And demographic transition, you have studied in population theory. Demographic transition theory talks about the three stages of population. One is the first stage of a population is in which birth rate and death rate both becomes higher. In second stage, birth rate is higher, but the death rate is lower, which is known as population explosion stage. And third stage is when birth rate and death rate both are falling. This stage belongs to developed countries. So structural changes and pattern of development, which is explained by Chandry's model, that said that if we move from agriculture to industrial production, if steady accumulation of physical and human capital increases, or it becomes, if these things are changes, and if there is a change in consumer demand, if urbanization is increasing, if family size is decreasing, and demographic transition theory is changing, that is the structural change and the pattern of development. Next is, what is the facts about India's economy? India's economy is a mixed economy. Mixed economy is that economy in which there is a coexistence in between of public sector and private sector. Since independence, India follow the path of mixed economy in which both these sectors are coexist in it. But US economy is capitalist economy. Russian and Chinese economy is a socialist economy. So India's economy is a developing economy, not fully developed economy. Next is the Indian middle class is bigger than the US middle class people. Third fact about Indian economy is half of the worker depends upon agriculture sector for employment. It means more than half of the country people are still engaged in agriculture sector for getting employment. Next, India's economy. In this economy, the cost of living is lower than in the US because India's per capita income is also very lower as compared to US economy. When our national income is lower, per capita income is lower, the purchasing power of the country people will also be lower. And here the cost of living is less than in the US. It's an attractive country for outsourcing, such as call centers. Most of the multinational corporations are working in Indian economy because Indian economy is the largest economy, is a very big economy and the second most largest populated country in the world. And India is giving very um, facilities to the multinational corporations, and India is inviting FDI, foreign direct investment, because India needs to be more production for increasing population. That's why India is a place where outsourcing, and it's a country, it's an attractive country for outsourcing, such as call centers, BPOs, multinational corporations, etc. And Bollywood in India, Bollywood contributes billions to India's GDP. So these are the facts about Indian economy. Next is the main sector at present is service sector. As you know that occupation structure can be classified into three categories. One is primary sector, second is manufacturing sector or secondary sector, and third is tertiary sector or service sector. At the time of independence, Indian economy was dependent on agriculture sector, and India's agriculture sector was giving more contribution in GDP at the time of independence. More than half contribution was come from agriculture sector. But at present, the contribution of agriculture sector is falling. The contribution of agriculture sector is at present near about 17%, but the service sector contribution in GDP is increasing. At the time of independence, the contribution of service sector in GDP was only 20% or 22%, but now its contribution in service sector is 56%, which is more than half. So service sector is that sector in which we include banking, insurance, transportation corporation, and shipping corporation, communication, etc. So service sector of the economy is more than twice the size of the manufacturing sector. Service sector accounts for more than half of all consumer expenditures. Almost 80% of all new jobs created over the past 10 years have been in the service sector. So service sector play very important role at present, and it is giving more contribution in GDP also. So service sector is very important sector in Indian economy. But at the time of independence, agriculture sector was very great contributor in GDP. Next is service sector industries in India and their effect on Indian economy. Service sector industries in India. Here is the wide variety of sectors such as healthcare, tourism, education, engineering, communication, transportation, information technology, IT sector, banking, finance, management, among others are available in India. And all these things are included in service sector. The government of India recognizes the importance of promoting growth in service sectors and provide several incentives for the growth of this sector, because this sector is at present very important sector, because it is giving more contribution in GDP, and it is creating employment opportunities also, and it is the very best sector. Generally three sectors are interconnected with each other: agriculture sector, and each and every sector has their own importance. Agriculture sector provides raw material to the industrial sector. Industrial sector produces goods and services with the help of the raw material which is provided by agriculture sector. After the growth of industrial sector, service sector play very important role, because without transportation facilities, without banking facilities, without insurance, without communication, without information technology, we can't sell our goods and services which is produced by agriculture sector or industrial sector. And each and every sector needs finance which is given by service sector. So service sector is the key, play important role in the development of the whole economy, and all these three sectors are interconnected with each other. So service sector is that sector in which we include all types of services like healthcare services, tourism services, educational services, engineering, communication, transportation, information technology, banking, insurance, finance, etc. All these things are included in service sector. Next is encouraging sign. Uh, from this graph, we can say that India's economy is growing because India's economy's GDP grew 8.7% in financial year 22, surpassing the pre-pandemic financial year of 20 level, and the recovery remains robust in first quarter financial year of uh, 23 despite global headwinds. And inflation rate may be 7.04%, fell from April levels of 7.79%. So India's economy is growing at the very faster rate, and India's economic condition is much better than other economies or other Asian countries. So we can say that India's economy is an emerging economy, and it's a good place for all the multinational corporations to invest their money. Or India's economy is also attracting foreign direct investment to produce more goods and services for the country. And balance of payment, our balance of payment may be favorable if more and more goods are produced in our country, then we can export more goods and services rather than imports. So these are the encouraging sign of India's economy. India's March quarter GDP growth rate at 4.1%, which was lower than the preceding quarter's 5.4%. But at the financial year of 22, India's economy is growing at the rate of 8.7%, surpassing the pre-pandemic financial year of 2011. So these are the encouraging sign of India's economy. Next is, if we compare India's economic growth with Chinese or China's growth, then we can say that there is a difference. Both the countries are developing countries, but the political system in India is multi-party system. Here is a democracy, and here is a mixed economy system exist. But in China, there is a one party system exist, and authoritarian rule exists in Chinese economy. And Chinese economy follows the socialist pattern of the or communal pattern of the system. The speed of growth, if we compare the speed of growth in between of India and China, then India's economic reform was started at the time period of 1991, but in China, economic reform started in 1978. India's average growth rate is 6% in past 2 decades, but in China, average growth rate is 9.5% in past 2 decades. It means China's growth rate um, during last 2 decades was higher than India's growth rate. And third is area of specialization. In India, rising power in software, designs, services, and precision industry are growing, and in China, dominant in mass manufacturing, electronics, and heavy industrial plants. It means the area of specialization in India is software, IT sector, design, services, and other precision industries. But in China, the mass production of manufacturing sector, electronics, and heavy industrial plants are growing. The main specialization area of China is this. So this is the comparison between India's and China's growth, because both the countries are Asian countries, and both the countries are developing countries, and both the countries are the most populated country in the world. China is in number one most populated country in the world, and India is the second most largest populated country in the world. Next is Asia's GDP during the time period of 1960s to 2020. In Asia, we include so many countries like Japan, China, India, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Philippines, Thailand. Korea. These all countries are known as Asian countries. So, in Asian countries, GDP growth rate during the time period of 1960 to 20 is in Japan. The data is 119.56 billion. It means in number one growth rate, Japan's GDP, gross domestic production of Japanese economy is a 119.56 billion dollars, and in China is the second contributor in GDP, 73.78. In third number, India's place 49.14. In fourth number, Turkey 15.28. In fifth number, 7.38 Iran contribution in GDP. It means the smallest or least contribution in GDP or less ratio of GDP exists in Korea, 4.64. So, Japanese economy contribution in GDP is higher than the other Asian countries, and India's place is 3, number 3, and China's place is number 2. So this is the comparison between Asian economies' GDP growth rate in billions dollar during the time period of 1960s to 2020. Next is contribution to GDP of sectors. As you know that there are three types of sector exist in each and every economy. Either it may be developed or developing or underdeveloped. Agriculture sector. First is agriculture sector. Second is manufacturing sector, and third is service sector. So this dark blue color is graph is showing agriculture sector, and light sky blue or gray color is showing manufacturing sector, and green color bar graph is showing service sector. So in 1950-51 time period, the contribution of agriculture sector in GDP was more than half, near about 55%. And the contribution of industrial sector was 15 to 16% only, and the service sector contribution was 23 to 24%. And in 2010-11, the contribution of agriculture sector falls and industrial sector contribution in GDP rise, and the service sector contribution in GDP is rise at the very faster rate, and the more most contribution of service sector in India is larger at the time period of 2010 and 11. During the time period of 15 to 16, same as agriculture contribution is near about 15 to 17%, and contribution of industrial sector in GDP is around 25%, and the contribution of service sector in GDP is near about 50%. So, to see this graph, we can say that the contribution of service sector in GDP is increasing after independence, and the contribution of agriculture sector in GDP is falling, and industrial sector contribution in GDP is fluctuating. Sometimes it increases, sometimes it falls, but it remains in between the range of 20 to 30%, not above that. So this is the contribution of GDP, contribution to GDP of different sectors like primary, agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, and service sector. Next is employment contribution. How much employment in industry as percentage or total employment in 2000 in different countries like India, Brazil, China, Indonesia, Pakistan, Vietnam, low income countries, lower middle income countries. So, World Development Indicators 2005 shows that in India, employment in industry as percentage, it means total employment in 2000 in percentage was in India only 18.2%, In Brazil, this ratio is 19.3%. China is creating more and more employment opportunities, 23% contribution in employment sector, and Indonesia 17.3%, in Pakistan 18%, in Vietnam 12.4%, in low income countries 12.3, and lower middle income countries this is 18.5. So this is the employment in industry as percentage total employment in 2000. From this table, we can say that the largest and more providing employment opportunities country is China. After that, Brazil plays third number. In India, rank is third, which is 18.2. It means India is providing employment opportunities at the level of 18.2%, and lower middle income countries providing 18.5%, which is higher. It means India's place is fourth, not third. India's place is fourth because the third place goes to lower middle income countries, which is creating employment opportunities 18.5%. So this is the employment industrial sector percentage. Next is India's more competitive. India's economy is more competitive economy with rest of the world. India's key indicators are population, GDP, GDP per capita, GDP, purchasing power parity. So India's population is 129 point or one near about at present. India's population is 135 crore, and GDP contribution of Indian economy is 2090.7 billion dollar. GDP per capita is 1617.3 dollar, and GDP purchasing power parity according to this percentage world GDP is 7.02. And global competitiveness index 2016 and 17 showing top 10 economies and BRICS. BRICS are B is Brazil, B represent Brazil, R is Russian economy, I is India, C is China, and S is South Africa. So the rank of different countries are: Switzerland rank is number 1, Singapore rank is number 2, United States rank is number 3, and Netherlands rank is 4, Germany rank is 5, Sweden rank is 6, and United Kingdom rank is 7. Japanese economies rank is 8, Hong Kong rank is 9, and Finland rank is 10. And the BRICS economy rank, in which we include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. China's rank is 28, India's rank is 39, Russia's rank is 43, South Africa rank is 47, and Brazil rank is 81, which is very lower. And that China's rank is 28, and India is after that China's rank 39. So India's rank, the 12 pillars of competitiveness. These are institutions, infrastructure, macroeconomic environment, health and primary education, higher education and training, goods market efficiency, labor market efficiency, financial market development, technological readiness, market size, business sophistication, and innovation. It means the rank which is given to these economies, these ranks are based on these 12 pillars of competitiveness, in which India's rank is 39. So, this is the uh, main performance of different economies and other BRICS economies, in which India's place is 39 or rank is 39 after China, and the developed countries rank is very higher. But still in BRICS nation, India's performance is not bad. India's performance is higher than Russia, South Africa, and Brazil also. Next is economic dimensions. What are economic dimensions? What are social dimensions in which India's economy can grow and in India's economy can achieve higher growth rate? Economic dimensions are one of the most frequently used in discussion of development like trade and international politics, a process by which the economies of the world become increasingly integrated, leading to global economy and increasingly global economic policy making, for example, through international agencies such as WTO, World Trade Organization, IMF, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank. So, economic dimensions if we study about economic development, then we must have to study about economic indicators or economic dimensions and social dimensions. So, economic dimensions under this we include uh, development, trade, and international politics. So, India's economy is growing, is developing, but not fully well developed because so many problems exist in India's economy, like poverty, unemployment, inequality, environmental pollution, and less rate of urbanization, and there is a wide gap in between of rich and poor. So these are the hurdles or obstacles. That's why India's economy is not well developed economy. It is still underdeveloped or developing economy. Uh, in economic dimensions or in social dimensions, there are three types of dimensions. One is economic dimension, second is environmental, and third is social or society. So economies, if we include in economic dimension, we include increase personal income and welfare. If in any country personal income is increasing or welfare is increasing, it means economy is developing. If in economy jobs are creating, new jobs are generating by the government or jobs opportunities are increasing, revitalizing the traditional industry, improving the distribution of wealth and resources, and if economy is promoting business prosperity and economic growth, it means these all are included in economic dimensions, and these dimensions are showing that these indicators, if these are in positive manner or increasing, then economy definitely will grow at the faster rate. And environmental issues or environmental dimensions included producing less rather using rather than owing, land and space use efficiency, fewer parking space and empty buildings, fewer public infrastructure investment, lower material demand and energy use, and reduce greenhouse gases emission and waste. If we decrease greenhouse gases emission and waste, if lower material demand and energy use, if fewer public infrastructure investment and private sector is investing more money in infrastructure sector, and if land and space both are using very efficiently or in such a manner so that environment is protected, then economy will also develop. And in society or social dimension, we include creating more interactions, new social ties, and promoting social mixing, building community networks, strengthening community resilience, contributing to a more trusting society, and improving social equity and reducing poverty. If our country is reducing poverty, generating employment opportunities, reducing inequalities of income and wealth, encouraging more and more employment opportunities, and providing best infrastructure facilities and increasing educational and healthcare services also, then definitely economy will grow and economy will achieve economic development at the very faster rate. Next is Composite Development Index. Now, what is Composite Development Index? There are so many types of index like Human Development Index, Happiness Index, Social Welfare Index. So, if we include all types of indexes in a one thing, that is called Composite Development Index. Composite Development Index is such an index which measures more than one variable or indicators. It does not only consider GDP per capita, but will also consider, for example, education, health, life expectancy, happiness, social welfare, etc. Composite indices are considered to be more accurate than looking at a single factor because they can take into account a variety of socio-economic indicators, and therefore no single factor can tip the scales. So, in short, we can say that Composite Development Index is the summation of all variables, all things in which per capita income, life expectancy, education, medical facilities, social welfare, all types of variables are included in this index. So if we include all types of index in a one thing, that is called Composite Development Index. So it measures more than one variable or indicators. That is Composite Development Index. Now in Composite Development Index, we include Human Development Index. What is HDI? HDI is Human Development Index. That is very important concept. Human Development Index uses 4 development indicators to give each country in the world a score between 0 and 1. Countries with a score which is close to 1 are the most developed countries, and those closer to 0 are the least developed countries. The 4 criteria are life expectancy at birth. It means uh, how much years a person expect to live. That is life expectancy. In developed nations, life expectancy rate is higher as compared to developing countries. In India, here the life expectancy is near about 65 years. But in developed nations, expected life or life expectancy ratio is 95 years, 90 years, 85 years, which is very higher. In those nations where life expectancy is higher, where education is or highly, when all country people are fully educated or highly educated, and when the gross national income of that country is higher, it means the rank of that nation will also be higher in Human Development Index. So these are the 4 criteria in which life expectancy is at birth included. Second is mean years of schooling for adults aged 25. And third is expected year of schooling for children of school entering age. And fourth is gross national income per capita, PPP. It means purchasing power parity. These 4 indicators said that uh, how HDI is estimated. If we include all these 4 criteria, which is the basis of Human Development Index, then we can estimate HDI. If life expectancy at birth is higher, if schooling for adults age 25 mean years of this is higher. If expected years of schooling for children is higher, if gross national income is higher, then the rank of that country in HDI will definitely be higher, and vice versa. Next is Social Progress Index. The second index is Social Progress Index. In Social Progress Index, there are three dimensions. One is basic human needs. If we want to estimate or calculate social progress index, then we must have to include these three things. One is basic human needs, second is foundation of well-being, and third is opportunities. In basic human needs, nutrition and basic medical care, water and sanitation, shelter, personal safety, these are our basic human needs like food, clothes, shelter, education, health, sanitation. These are our basic requirements. And if a person is not getting these basic requirements which is necessary for survival, it means their index will be lower. And second is foundation of well-being. What is the foundation of well-being? Access to basic knowledge, access to information and communication, health and wellness, and environmental quality. All these things are included in well-being, or these are the foundation of well-being. And in third, opportunity. In opportunity, personal rights. Government should provide personal rights, or what if we have personal rights, we can do uh, anything which we want to do. That is the meaning of personal right. If there is a personal freedom and choice exist in our country, if inclusion and access to advanced education, if all these opportunities are available in any country, their social progress index definitely will be higher. So, in social progress index, we include these three things. One is basic human need plus foundation of well-being plus opportunity. And these are the subparts of these three components. One is basic human need, in which we include food, clothes, shelter, education, health, sanitation. And in foundation of well-being, we include access to basic knowledge, access to information and communication, health and wellness, and environmental quality. And in opportunity, we include personal rights, personal freedom and choice, inclusion, and access to advanced education. So, if all things are higher in any country, then social progress index definitely will be higher. And if all these things are not available in any country, it means their social progress index will be lower. Next is third index is happiness index, World Happiness Index. How this happiness index measures? The World Happiness Report 2021 ranks 149 countries by their happiness levels based on factors like per capita GDP. Happiness index based on one is per capita GDP, second is social support, third is healthy life expectancy, and fourth is freedom to make choices, and fifth is generosity and corruption perceptions, among others. All these things are included in World Happiness Index. Here, this graph shows how select countries are ranked in the report. Finland's score is very higher in World Happiness Index. Finland is the most happiest country in the world, and its rank is 7.842. Second most happiest country in the world is Denmark. Third is Switzerland. Fourth is Iceland. Fifth is Netherlands. The rank of these nations are 1. Rank 1 is Finland. Rank 2 is Denmark. Rank 3 is Switzerland. Rank 4 is Iceland. Rank 5th is Netherlands. Australia rank is 11. Germany rank is 13, and UK rank is 17, USA rank is 19, France rank is 21, Saudi Arabia rank is 26, and Brazil rank is 35. Japanese economy rank is 56, and Russia's rank is 76, China's rank is 84, Nepal rank is 87, Bangladesh rank is 101, and South Africa rank is 103, Turkey rank is 104, Pakistan rank is lower 105, Iran rank is 118, Sri Lanka rank is 129, and India's rank is very lower rather than other countries. If we see that India's rank is very lower 139, and after India, only one country left, Afghanistan, which rank is lower than India, 149 in World Happiness Index. It means Indian economy is not included in this. India is the least happiness country in the world, and after India, 149 rank goes to Afghanistan. It means Afghanistan is also very least happiest country in the world. India is very unhappy. Why Indian economy is very unhappy? Why India's in World Happiness Index rank is very lower and this rank is 139? Why? Its reason is because in India, here the life expectancy is lower than other developed countries. In India's near about 60% here people are educated, but 40% are still uneducated. And in India, there is the less per capita income or low per capita income exists. That's why India's rank is lower. And here the environmental quality is also very poor. And here the sanitation facility, water facility, basic requirements here, the poverty level is higher. And here unemployment problem also exists, and inequality in between of rich and poor is also very higher. That's why Indian economy is very uh, poor and very unhappy. If we compare with other nations or developed or other BRICS nation, then we can find out that India's condition in World Happiness Index is very lower. Next is Next is the topic of balance of payment, which is also in your unit 13, balance of payment. Balance of payment is a systematic record of all the economic transactions like exports and imports of goods and services. So, balance of trade and balance of payment, these are two different concepts. Balance of trade is a narrow concept, but balance of payment is a broader concept. Balance of trade includes only goods, exports, and imports, but balance of payment includes both goods and services, exports, and imports. So, trade balance is often a major determinant of payment balance. And if there is a trade deficit, it means balance of payment may be surplus or may be in deficit. If our exports are more than imports, then balance of payment will be in surplus. And if our imports are more than exports, then balance of payment will be in deficit. So trade deficit has often caused balance of payment deficit for India. One of the important reasons for the recent balance of payment problem was the decline in the role of invisible surpluses in financing the trade deficit. Except for brief periods, India's BOP has shown deficit. Generally, India's balance of payment remains always in balance only in an accounting sense, but not in practical sense. Because balance of payment is a systematic record of all the economic transactions of goods and services like exports and imports. If we do trade with rest of the world and include all types of goods and services, in this trade, then we can calculate balance of payment. So balance of trade or balance of payment, both are different concepts. One is narrow and balance of payment is broader concept. And trade may be surplus, trade may be deficient, depends upon exports and imports. If exports are higher, then trade will be in surplus, and if imports are higher than exports, then trade will be in deficit. Balance of payment has two accounts. One is current account and capital account. And trade deficit is widening in India because here we are importing more and more goods from rest of the world and exporting less and cheaper goods to rest of the world. That's why in India the income received from export remains lower than the income paid to the abroad for imports remains always higher. That's why our trade remains always in deficit position. So balance of payment, why balance of payment is in deficit when imports are or import prices are higher than import prices, or when imports items are more than export items. So export growth is lowering, but the import growth, which is in yellow line, that is increasing. If imports are increasing, exports are decreasing, then trade deficit occurs and trade deficit widens. This graph is showing trade deficit, which is in increasing trend. It means in India, balance of payment remains always unfavorable due to heavy imports and less exports. And balance of payment has two components. One is current component and current account, and second is capital account. In current account, we include goods, services, and unilateral payments. And in capital account, we include all capital transactions, either it may be short time period or long time period, banking capital, FDI, portfolio investment, all types of capital transactions are included in capital account. And BOP is the summation of all these two accounts, current and capital account, and it may be in surplus or may be in deficit, depends upon the quantity of imports and quantity of exports and the prices of imports and prices of exports. And the last unit, which is included in international comparison, unit 14, which is related with governance and institution. So what is the meaning of governance? Here we will discuss about the meaning of governance. The governance meaning is the need for governance exists anytime a group of people come together to accomplish an end. Governance primarily covers three dimensions. One is authority, second is decision making, and third is accountability. If these three dimensions, which included in government, if all works very efficiently, that governance is called good governance. If government make good decisions for the development of the country, if government is accountable for all the works which government do, and if government has a good authority and government has power who makes decision and how other players make their voice heard. So governance determines who has power, who makes decision, and how other players make their voice heard. So all these things make governance. Ultimately, the application of good governance serves to realize organizational and societal goals. So, good governance is that governance in which all goals of the economy or society when government is able to achieve all goals of the economy, that governance is called good governance. And meaning of governance is which determines the power, makes decision, and uh, take this thing कि how other players make their voice heard. So at present, this governance is topic is very important, and the need for governance exists anytime a group of people in which people come together to accomplish an end. And governance primarily included three dimensions: one is authority, second is decision making, and third is accountability. What are the various types of governance? There are so many types of governance which exist in each and every different countries. Here the governance types are: number one is democratic governance, in which all country people involved in making the governance, that is democratic governance. And good governance always focuses on economic and social dimensions of the economy, and mainly focus to achieve all the goals of the country which is necessary for the development of the nation, that is called good governance. One is a different type of governance is corporate governance. In corporate governance, which always encourage corporate sectors and to promote corporate industries for the development of the country. Next is global governance. Governance may be global if you govern, if your decision followed by all the world countries, all the countries of the world, that is called global governance. It means if your decisions, if your authority accepted by all the nations, that is global governance. And e-governance, in which you govern the all the systems of the economy through uh, electronic or computers or emails or uh, information technology through this media. And next is environmental governance, in which environmental of the whole world can be governed by the policies making or decision makings by the government. So there are different types of governance. One is democratic governance, second is good governance, third is corporate governance, fourth is global governance, next is e-governance, and next is last is environmental governance. Now next is government or governance versus management administration. As I told you that what is the meaning of governance? Governance is the work of the board in setting policies, and it defines the board purpose. It explains how to make decisions for the economy, and it defines board purpose, and it establishes roles of board members. And management or administrations is delegated to the CEO, chief executive officers, and staff, and it implements policies set by the board or set by the governance, and it involves operations of the organization. It means administrations, management, or institutions are those sectors which perform the policies, which do the main, which implements all the policies which is set by the board and which is set by the governance, and it involves the all the operations of the organization. And in management or administration, which is delegated to the CEO and staff. So this is the basic difference between governance and institution or management. Next is summary, conclusion. In this unit or in last block, international comparison, you have studied about so many topics, so many units are included in this. Like in this, you have studied about first thing is what is the meaning of international comparison and how we can compare structural changes uh, with Indian economy and rest of the world like BRICS nation, developed nations, and what is the trade or balance of trade and why trade deficit occurs, what is the meaning of good governance, the legitimacy of public institution is crucial for building peaceful and inclusive societies. While levels of trust in institutions vary significantly across countries, opinion surveys suggest that there has been a decline in trust in public administrations institutions in recent decades. So all these things you have studied in this unit. Now this Indian economy paper 1, all topics are covered in different sessions of this uh, classes. So read carefully all these topics. Now this BECE 145 unit and all the blocks are covered in live sessions. Thank you.